Welcome back to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here. If you're trying to make sense of this crowded, incredibly complex world we're living in, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking on a massive synthesis. We're going to take the top 15 global events unfolding literally right now on August 26th, 2026, and organize them into a really clear, digestible structure. We'll be connecting the dots across continents, from catastrophic natural disasters like the devastating floods on the Nepal-China border, all the way to some truly critical geopolitical shifts. There's a lot of ground to cover today, so let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of today's massive news cycle, we've broken the information down into four thematic buckets. First, global crises and emergencies. Second, diplomacy and defense spending. Third, U.S. immigration and policy. And finally, tech, business, and health. Starting us off with Section 1, Global Crises and Emergencies. The sheer volume of concurrent global emergencies right now is staggering. First up, severe flash flooding and landslides have struck the Nepal-China border. This is specifically hitting Nepal's Raswa district and Tibet's Gurong County. We're looking at a confirmed death toll of over 160 people, with hundreds more still missing, including dozens of foreign tourists and pilgrims. Meanwhile, in a completely separate hemisphere, the Colombian government has just been forced to declare a state of emergency across 15 different departments. This is the fallout from a massive magnitude 7.5 earthquake in Chocó, which has triggered major humanitarian and infrastructure crises. And at the exact same time in Haiti, we're seeing a severe humanitarian escalation. Deadly armed gang attacks are expanding out of the capital and into the farming communities of Kenskoff near Port-au-Prince. This violence is displacing hundreds of families and leaving numerous residents dead. Alongside these sudden, loud disasters, there's a silent, ongoing crisis we have to talk about. In Afghanistan right now, a staggering 3.7 million children are suffering from acute malnutrition. And of that group, nearly 1 million of those children are facing immediate, life-threatening conditions. Breaking down this catastrophic scale really emphasizes the massive, heartbreaking human cost of ongoing regional instability. Finally, wrapping up this section, 56,000. That's the number of Malawian nationals who have just completed a massive repatriation process, essentially fleeing South Africa. Now, why this matters is that this mass exodus is directly driven by ongoing anti-immigrant violence. So it's not just a humanitarian issue. It actually represents a major disruption to regional free movement initiatives all across Southern Africa. Moving on to Section 2, Diplomacy and Defense Spending. Before we get into the data, I want to ask you this directly. How much do you think global security costs in 2026? It's a huge question, I know, but it sets up a massive global macro statistic from a recent UN Interpress Service report that really puts the entire international landscape into perspective. The answer is $2.9 trillion. Just let the shock value of that number sink in for a second. According to the report, global defense spending reached a historic, record-breaking $2.9 trillion for the 2025 to 2026 period. This right here is the financial engine driving new international coalitions for collective security. When the world feels unstable, like we just saw in the first section, this is the monetary response from global governments. But there is some serious friction happening within these international coalitions. UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk was successfully reappointed by the General Assembly for a second four-year term. However, there was significant pushback. His reappointment was opposed by 10 member nations, and prominently leading that opposition, the US and Russia. It's incredibly rare to see those two powers aligned in opposition like that, which just brilliantly illustrates the deep diplomatic tensions and shifting power dynamics right at the very top of the UN. And this all builds into these parallel strategic movements happening globally. China's foreign ministry announced President Xi Jinping is preparing for official state visits to Kyrgyzstan and Egypt, Eastern diplomacy stretching outward. But at the exact same time, we're seeing global maritime training connecting Asia and Europe. The Indian Navy's INS Sudarshan just completed a port call in Lisbon, Portugal, marking a key milestone in their Lokayan 2026 global training deployment. These are calculated strategic movements showcasing what is essentially a highly active diplomatic chessboard. Pivoting now to Section 3, U.S. Immigration and Policy. Take a look at this staggering figure, $103,265. Now, this isn't a salary or a grant. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has introduced a formal regulatory proposal to implement this exact six-figure fee as a regulatory surcharge for new H-1B visa applications.
It's an absolutely unprecedented financial hurdle being proposed for highly skilled international workers trying to enter the U.S. workforce.
And the friction in the immigration system doesn't stop with fees. The U.S. State Department has actually paused routine visa appointment scheduling worldwide. This isn't localized to a specific region. It is a complete global halt to routine visa services. It's part of newly expanded immigration administrative reviews. Basically, the pipeline for legal entry into the U.S. has essentially been put on a massive operational hold while these reviews take place. Looking domestically, we're also seeing major legal and legislative shifts. First, a major civil rights fraud settlement. Deloitte has agreed to pay $21.5 million to resolve U.S. Department of Justice allegations. The DOJ claimed that Deloitte's diversity programs actually violated federal anti-discrimination requirements. Second, over at the state level, Illinois has signed a new state investment law. This legislation explicitly allows public funds to be invested in labor-affiliated housing trusts, effectively expanding union-backed construction investments. So we're seeing two very distinct developments showcasing how both federal oversight and state-level financial strategies are evolving rapidly this year. Which brings us to our fourth and final section, tech, business, and health. Let's start with a number that is honestly almost hard to comprehend, $100 billion. This represents the massive financial scale of SpaceX's newly announced plans. They're preparing to construct a colossal, state-of-the-art launch facility in Vermilion Parish, Louisiana. It's an astronomical investment into physical infrastructure right here on Earth, totally designed to get us off the planet faster and more frequently. But here is what you should take away from this. This macro $100 billion investment translates directly down to a micro-level reality for local communities. This Louisiana spaceport is projected to create up to 10,000 new jobs. That is an enormous economic injection for Vermilion Parish, essentially turning an aerospace ambition into a massive regional employment engine. Now, shifting gears from tech and business into health, we have to talk about a major medical study that was released today. Just for some quick context, let's define CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. It's a severe brain condition directly linked to repeated head injuries. This has obviously been a growing concern in contact sports for years, but today, researchers released updated longitudinal findings specifically focusing on retired NFL athletes. So, the crucial point is pretty sobering. A full 25%, literally 1 in 4 of the studied former players, showed CTE indicators. While 75% didn't show indicators or their status is currently unknown, confirming that a quarter of this studied athlete population is exhibiting signs of this debilitating condition is a massive wake-up call for sports medicine and player safety moving forward. We have covered an immense amount of ground today, from catastrophic natural disasters on the Nepal-China border to a historic $2.9 trillion in global defense spending, to a $100 billion spaceport in Louisiana. Seeing all these deeply colliding events forces us to ask one final question. How will they redefine global stability for the remainder of 2026? Everything is connected, and the ripples from today's news will absolutely impact our world tomorrow. I really hope this explainer gave you the clarity you need to continue exploring these massive trends. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll catch you next time.